It's just like you wouldn't know how to take care of your car or your computer if you didn't read the manual.
Sure.
Okay. Well, first off, we have a manual. It's called the Bible.
Right.
Okay. And there's lots of good, solid scientific information in the Bible about our body.
Right.
And how it works. We have to keep the body balanced. Okay. We talked about the mental aspect, the chemical aspect, and then there's a third portion, and that's the body. Okay, the physical existence.
Okay, take a few minutes and just, if you had to break the body into a few basic systems, explain what do we have, how does it work?
Okay. Well, the first system I'd have to start with is the nervous system.
Okay.
Okay. The nervous system, as I said, is responsible for controlling and coordinating all the structures and all the functions of the human body, either directly or indirectly.
Okay.
Okay?
We've all got a head.
We've all got a head. Weighs 13 to 15 pounds, the average adult head.
The brain weighs 3 to 5 pounds.
3 to 5 pounds.
Okay. That brain controls everything.
Yes.
But it has to get the message to the body.
Yes.
Which comes through the spinal column.
It comes through the spinal column. 97% of the nerves that control our body come out in between the bones of the spine. They exit the skull, okay, and travel down through the spinal cord, exiting through the spinal, in between the spinal vertebra.
Okay.
Okay.
So God designed the body with the central head, just like Christ is the head of the church.
Christ is the head of the church.
And we're all supposed to be lined up with him.
That's right.
And sometimes we get out of line.
Yes, we do.
And problems come in.
Yes. You know, anytime you lose the alignment, okay, when you're improperly tapped into the source, okay, spiritually with Christ,
right,
as the head of the church, also as the head of the body. Everything starts in the head. It comes down from the head, down through the body, out to the parts, causing the parts to grow according to the way Christ would have them grow. Okay, we know embryologically in a developing baby, okay, if we sever a nerve, whatever that nerve was controlling will not develop.
So you could cut the nerve to the lung?
And the lungs would never form.
Okay.
Okay. Everybody knows in an adult that if you sustain a spinal trauma and you sever the spinal cord in the lower back, okay, you lose function of the legs.
Right.
And over time, the legs atrophy.
Sure.
Okay, because they have no neurological source directing their activity. Okay. Our body makes about 50,000 new cells every 10 minutes.
Okay.
Okay. Traveling in our brainstem are 100 million nerve impulses per second. Okay. Information coming from the body up to the brain interpreting that information, and then sending a response back down. Okay.
Doesn't it also filter out, decide what's important?
Oh, absolutely. It's got an amazing filtering system. Okay. Technically, our nervous system is so fine-tuned that it is perceiving the fly that's bouncing off the window in the front of the building. Okay. It's picking up that sound wave. Okay. Bringing it in, but it's throwing it out as unnecessary information.
Right.
Okay. Don't bother me with that right now.
Right now, I was not thinking about my right foot, but if I stopped and thought about it, I could tell you without looking what position it's in, you know, what pressure points it has.
Exactly. Constant communication. All the bodily parts, all the body parts, okay, are constantly feeding information up into the brain, telling the brain where the body's at.
Right.
Just a simple little process of coming up and scratching our nose.
Sure.
Okay, very complex neurological process.
Oh, get a robot to do that. It's incredible.
It's incredible. Okay. It starts with the conscious thing, I want to scratch my nose.
Right.
Okay, and I start moving my finger toward the nose. But as I'm moving my arm, okay, I've got nerve endings in the joints and the muscles of my arms firing information back into my brain, telling my brain how I'm doing. Okay, and it starts making corrections. Otherwise, I end up with the finger in the eye.
Which is coordination.
It's a coordination process. Okay, so you know we have different parts of the brain responsible for different parts of the job. Okay, the Bible says that every part has a job.
Sure.
Okay, and you can't make another part do a different part's job.
The eye can't do the job of the ear.
The eye can't do the job of the ear. Okay, so the nervous system by far is the primary system of importance in the human body. As a matter of fact, all the other systems we have are actually supportive to the nervous system. Our nervous system will shut down all the other parts and deprive them of anything they need in order to preserve itself.
Okay.
Okay, you see, it's our nervous system that gives us our identity. It is our nervous system that makes us consciously aware of our Creator. Okay, I mean, it is the primary purpose. Okay, the musculoskeletal system, which comprises 60% of our body, that's the muscles and the bones.
Right.
Okay, body mass is equivalent to about 60%. Okay, the primary function of the musculoskeletal system is first to provide protection to the nervous system. Okay, and then to provide mobility to the nervous system. See, if you were just a nervous system and the rock was falling off the cliff,
You couldn't move.
you couldn't move to get out of the way. Okay, so the Lord gave us a musculoskeletal system to get us out of the way of the falling rock.
And everything else feeds information to this system.
Everything.
The eyes tell us what we're looking at. The ears, what we're hearing,
Right.
feeling.
Yeah, exactly. Matter of fact, our brain, we have centers in our brain that directly tie our eyes to our neck. That's the only function of that piece of brain. And it's designed to get us out of the way of the baseball without thinking.
Sure.
Okay, that's occurring without conscious awareness. Now, as I'm happening in it, and the ball's already past me, I'm going, whew, that was close.
Right.
Okay, but that was a neurological reflex that took place simply from the eyes to this one brain center, okay, and then right down to the muscles of the neck to make us do that. We have a similar system for auditory response. Okay, we hear a loud bang, we're doing that. Okay, and
Or
that's
you step on a nail.
Or you step on a nail.
Your leg jerks.
Leg jerks. Okay, those occur at spinal cord levels, but at the same time, they're also sending information back up to the brain. Okay, so that the brain is constantly aware where that foot is. Mm-hmm. I've used when I taught anatomy and physiology, I used the example of putting your hand on a hot plate.
Right.
Okay, you put your hand on a hot plate, and you're going to reflex right back off. Mm-hmm. Okay, that part of the reflex is actually simply spinal cord. Okay, it goes into the spinal cord and right back out. Now, as it goes in, and as it's sending one message back out to pull the arm off, it's also sending a message up to the head saying, I'm pulling my arm off. That was hot. Dummy, don't do it again.
Right.
Okay. And at the same time, it's sending a message to our cerebellum so that when I jerk that hand back, I don't end up slapping myself in the head, causing another injury. Okay, because that's just a reflex.
Okay.
Okay, so that neurological center, our brain, is controlling the memory of it's hot. Okay,
Right.
Don't do that again, dummy.
Right.
Okay, and it's also saying, hey, on your way back, don't hit yourself in the head.
All like that.
All on nanoseconds.
Okay, so you got 206 bones in the human adult body.
206 bones in the human adult body and over 600 muscles in the human adult body. And they are all interconnected. Okay?
Quite a wiring system.
Yeah, it's quite a wiring system. Okay? They are interconnected neurologically. Okay, through the mechanisms I've just kind of talked about
Right.
briefly, but they're also interconnected biomechanically. Okay, we're a giant system of levers and pulleys. And anytime you move one set of muscles and joints, you're causing a series of biomechanical chain reactions that's influencing the muscular tension and the joint position throughout the rest of the system. Okay, that's the balancing and the antagonistic kind of responses. Okay, to our actions. Okay.
And that system can be studied for a lifetime. But just to give people a general perspective here, you got 206 bones, 600 or so muscles,
Mm-hmm.
all connected. Now, those bones and muscles and nerves, etc., they need something to function. They need proper fuel. They need,
Absolutely.
which is what the whole nutrition and health
Yeah.
is all about. That's the other part of your sermon,
But-
about polar bear, bumblebee, and
healthcare.
Healthcare.
And healthcare.
how do you take care of this body? I got this complex body. I was born. I didn't know anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
Everything I know about it now, I've learned, and there's probably a lot more to learn.
Mm-hmm.
If you had to explain to somebody, what basic principles do you do as far as taking care of your body?
Well, keeping in mind that our objective is keeping the body balanced the way God intended it.
Right.
Okay. Man was not meant to mend his body. He was meant to take care of it. Health and healing comes from above.
Okay.
Okay. And more times than not, what we need to do is instead of intervening, trying to make his creation better, trying to correct his mistakes. Okay, our Creator didn't make mistakes.
Right.
It was a perfect creation, a perfect body. Okay, and what we have wrong with it now is a result of this world's perversion of that body, and not his creation mistakes.
Okay.
Most of our healthcare is geared towards making it better. Okay, well, you got this symptom. Let's give you a drug that will make the opposite happen. Okay, if you've got a part that's not working right, let's just take the part out. Okay, we've got machines that will do that job for you, or heck, it's an extra part, you don't need it anyhow.
Right.
Okay.
Back to evolutionary philosophy.
Back to the evolutionary philosophies again. What we are supposed to do is keep the body balanced the way God intended it. We are supposed to take care of the musculoskeletal system. It is 60% of our body. Okay. Roger Sperry, a very intelligent individual, won a Nobel Prize back in the early 90s for his work in brain research. He is a neurophysiologist.
Okay.
Dr. Sperry said a couple of very interesting things. He said, first off, that 90% of our neurological mental activity, is actually geared towards maintaining the musculoskeletal system. Okay, so 90% of the activity our brain goes through, okay, is it's doing so in order to keep the bones, the muscles, and the joints in their proper interrelationship.
Automatically moving when you get uncomfortable.
Automatically moving when you get uncomfortable. You know, contracting muscles for respiratory purposes.
Heart beating.
Heart beating, all those sorts of, well, not so much heart beating, that falls into cardiovascular. Okay, but musculoskeletal maintenance, okay, is what 90% of our activity is taking place as far as neurological is concerned. So if you Dr. Sperry also said that as a person's body distorts, it has less energy available for metabolism, healing, and thinking. Okay?
Because the first thing it's going to do is...
It's going to shift its concentration and its effort into maintaining that musculoskeletal system. If you've got a brand new automobile,
right,
with a brand new, perfect front end alignment, okay, you can drive down that road using a little finger.
Right.
Okay, because it doesn't take much energy, much effort to maintain.
Because it's working right.
Because it's working right.
Okay.
If you get a bad alignment, if you hit a few potholes over the years, okay, and those tires, the camber on those tires starts to change, and now you've got a bad alignment. Well, now you've got to use both hands on the steering wheel because you have to fight, okay, the distortion and the dysfunction, okay, that is taking place in those wheels. Okay?
So your driving energy is not being directed to...
towards going forward, it's being directed towards just keeping the car on the road.
So your body's energy can be directed to things that it shouldn't have to be directed toward.
Exactly. As our body becomes distorted, okay, once again, remembering that all of our systems are geared towards preservation of the nervous system.
Okay.
Okay. We are 60% musculoskeletal. Okay. Without our musculoskeletal system, our nervous system is vulnerable to all the forces of gravity, okay, and all the other things that can happen in this world. Okay, so as that body distorts, your brain shifts more and more neurological activity, okay, to the care and the maintenance and just trying to get that musculoskeletal system to do its job.
So are you saying if a person is tired a lot,
there's very probable structural distortions that's causing that body to work overtime.
So the energy is going the wrong place.
Energy's going the wrong place. It's an improper energy conversion.
Or if a person is just simply not alert mentally.
If the person is not mentally alert, less energy for metabolism, running the parts.
Right.
And less metabolism for healing, repairing the parts.
Right.
Okay, and less metabolism for thinking, i.e., contemplating the parts.
Right.
Okay. You know, it talks about, you know, science has said for years that we're only utilizing a very small percentage of our brain power.
I had students that used
very
small.
Yeah, I know. I taught a little college myself. It's amazing how much little brain power they can use.
Yes, sir.
But when they make statements like that, they're talking about our conscious brain power.
Okay.
They aren't talking about our brainstem levels, our basic biological functions. People don't damage brainstems and be normal.
Right.
You know, okay, when you damage those those more basic neurological centers, okay, you are going to have some sort of long-term ramifications in the system. You know, we're not talking about the part you think with. We're talking about the part that you exist. That makes
part you're not thinking about.
The part you're not thinking about.
So you got this spine coming out of the brain.
Yes.
Going through the nerve is going through the vertebrae.
The spinal cord comes out through the foramen magnum at the base of the skull, and then it goes through a series of 26 vertebrae. Okay, from the base of our skull all the way down to our tailbone.
Right.
And then coming out in between those vertebrae, these vertebrae sit on top of one another. I have just a few of them here.
Like a stack of donuts.
Like a stack of donuts stacked on top of one another. And when they do so, in between each bone, they form a little canal. It's called the intervertebral foramen. And coming out of one side, in between two bones, is approximately 300,000 nerves. So coming out in between, on one side would be 300,000 nerves, and on the other side would be another 300,000 nerves.
So this is your wiring harness.
This is your wiring. This is the communication cables.
Right.
Okay, between the body parts and the command center. Okay, it takes place from the base of the skull all the way down to your tailbone, about 31 pairs.
Okay, now a fiber optic cable can handle an enormous amount of information. I know they say if you cut a fiber optic cable and you're digging in your yard, they're going to charge you $10,000 a minute or something like that to come fix it.
Right, exactly.
Because there's a lot of stuff going through there. Is a nerve more complex than a fiber optic cable as far as is it carrying more information? Or any analogy there? Would you?
Well, yeah, certainly I believe it's more complex.
Sure.
Okay, without a doubt, because we are talking about